Yes, I can teach you how to graph asymptotes. So we have to remember what the definition of an asymptote is. Now, an asymptote is not a point, but rather a line on the graph which the graph cannot cross. So now that we know what an asymptote is, we can actually find them now. So a method we could use to find asymptotes when we have a numerator and denominator is the denominator cannot be equal to 0. It can get very, very close to 0, but it can never equal 0. So that's where the asymptote is, where the denominator equals 0, because it's never going to equal 0. So what can we do to find where the denominator equals 0? Well, we could just set the denominator equal to 0 and then solve for that, which is what I'm going to do right now. So after solving, we can see that x equals a positive or negative 1, which is where the vertical asymptotes are going to be. So we're just going to write our vertical asymptotes right here next to the graph. Then we're going to draw them. So we have x equals 1 and x equals negative 1. So we're going to draw lines where those points are. So at positive 1, x equals positive 1, that's one of the asymptotes. And then x equals negative 1, right there. So those are our two vertical asymptotes. Okay, so now we know how to find vertical asymptotes. But you may be asking, Aiden, how do we find horizontal asymptotes? Well, that's what I'm going to show you right now. Now, we have a special trick for finding horizontal asymptotes, and it all has to do with these two variables. So, let's look at the exponents on them. Now, if the top exponent is bigger, then there's going to be no horizontal asymptote. If the bottom exponent is bigger, then there's going to be a horizontal asymptote right on the x-axis. And if there's the same exponent, then the coefficients of the variables over each other is going to be the asymptote. So let's look at our problem. Well, we have x squared and x squared. There's the same one. So that means we're just going to take the coefficients of these two exponents. So we have 3, and then since there's an invisible 1 here, it's just 1. So now this is going to be our horizontal asymptote, 3 over 1, which we could just draw right now. 3 over 1 is going to be right here. And there you go. We've successfully found every single asymptote of this graph. Now, here's an extra practice problem for you guys to try on your own. I'll leave an explanation for it down in the comments. God bless.